to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome to our September meeting. The year is going by quickly, almost fall. Just in case anyone is interested, we do have in the back some mask and sanitizing lotion in case you want to make yourself available of that. Also back there are some agendas for the evening's meeting, as well as I think some mailings that were done by Penn Waste, and also the latest newsletter that we did. The agenda for this evening's meeting was posted on the township website, on our Facebook page, and on our meeting room door. Meeting is being video recorded. It will be accessible through the township's website, and written minutes will be available after they're approved by the board. There'll be 2 opportunities for public comment. After being recognized by the chair, we would ask you step up to the podium and give your name and address before addressing the board. And if there's anyone with us virtually, I don't know, is there, Todd?
Everyone.
Okay, they can always address us by using the hand raise icon. Township manager will be monitoring the virtual meeting. And just remember, if you do address the board, speak as close as you can get to the microphone with a strong voice so that can be heard virtually. With that, we'll do self-introduction of the supervisors.
Jeff Rogers.
Art Rutledge.
Bob Brown. Jeff Reynolds.
And to my left is the township manager, Todd Ziegler, and our solicitor, Tim Buck. And with us virtually is the recording secretary, Wendy Brown. With that, we will turn to the agenda. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our August meeting.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to approve and second. Are there any comments or questions before we vote? I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
5 votes to the affirmative. The minutes are accepted. We'll move to the treasurer's report. Are there any questions or comments regarding the treasurer's report?
Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Interest keeps climbing up a little bit. I think we were up to just under $3,000 last month, so that helps a bit. So no other questions? Call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
5 votes to the affirmative. The treasurer's report is accepted. Next item would be our first opportunity for public comment. Is there anybody who wishes to address the board at this time? And no one virtually. All right, we'll move on. We have some ordinance and resolutions. The first is ordinance number 2022-07. This is amendment to the volunteer service credit program for firemen. Essentially affects the real estate tax. I don't know if you want to introduce it a little bit, Todd.
Yeah, what this amendment is for, if you recall, in 2018, we adopted the first ordinance which allowed for an earned income tax credit up to $500 for any volunteer EMS or fire personnel who is a resident of Shrewsbury Township and served one of the 3 volunteer fire companies that serve Shrewsbury Township. Since that time, and also at that same time, the state allowed a real estate tax credit as well, but it could not exceed 20% of what that real estate tax was, the base amount. Shrewsbury Township's real estate tax is extremely low, so we did not implement it at that time because, for example, if your home's assessed at $200,000 in real estate tax, you can pay Shrewsbury Township $14.80. So it was a lot of paperwork to get $3 or $4 back. Since then, there's been an amendment up in Harrisburg to the statute, which now allows up to 100% of the real estate payment as a tax credit, again, for the volunteers. The next item will be adopted as a resolution. It's actually amending the current one, but in that resolution, there's criteria for fire and for EMS. They get X amount of points for, attending a fundraiser, we're adding this year, for the first time, they get credit for participating in, public education. So there's a whole list of things. So what this ordinance and the resolution does is amend our existing ordinance and our program to now include real estate that we did not have before, and that's at 100% of face value.
Anybody with questions? I think we can probably do one motion to accept both of those if that's your choice.
I will make that motion.
Okay.
Approve, ordinance number 2022-07 and resolution number 2022-11.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance and the resolution as noted. Any questions before we vote? We shall vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
5 votes to the affirmative. So ordinance 2022-07 and resolution 2022-11 are accepted. A little bit of help to the fire company, Brad. All right, the next item on the list will be subdivision and land development. And I guess the first one up is Chesapeake Commerce Center and Marketplace. There's some modification requests and a final minor subdivision plan. Todd, do you all want to explain it or you want
Well, I
Sure.
think we'll let them, present the plan
Okay.
itself. And if there's any question regarding the planning commission recommendations,
to? Okay,
I can address those at that time.
Good evening. I'm Josh Hoffman with Snyder Secarian Associates, which is now a division of Pannoni. I'm here, civil engineer for this project, representing Chestnut Commerce Center and Marketplace LLC for the final minor subdivision plan, which is entitled for Chestnut Commerce Center and Marketplace LLC. The two existing properties are located at 15232 Elm Drive and 800 Keeney Lane.
Josh, just not to interrupt you, but I always like to explain to folks, we share this screen for those on Zoom. They can't see your pointer. So if you see my hand chasing your, I'm not.
Okay, I got you. That makes sense.
I'm doing that so the folks at home can see what you're pointing to.
So don't go too fast.
Yeah.
Perfect. So these are the parcels that I'm referring to right here. This large parcel, this large parcel. Both of the parcels have frontage along Elm Drive, which is located right here, and East Tolna Road, which is a portion of it fronts the one property right here. It also has frontage along Interstate 83 in this location. The two properties, there are actually three properties. There's a small interior property right here. The three parcels total about 110 acres currently. What we're proposing to do is subdivide those parcels and create two proposed tracts of land both for potential future development. The one of them totals about 62 acres and the other one's about 42 acres, give or take, with the net property that's along the frontage of Elm Drive in this location. So if I could have you flip the sheet three, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so it is sheet three. So we're removing this property line essentially right here. We're consolidating a portion of this property to create the total tract for lot one, which is this one right here. So the new property line essentially kind of follows the somewhat along the existing stream that goes through the property. And then the residual lot two is the rebalance of it, this remaining portion here. So that's essentially the plan. We're not proposing, this is just a final minor subdivision plan. We are requesting four waivers as part of the plan. We've actually received, before I get to the waivers, we received the August 24th, 2022 letter from your engineer. And basically the items that are remaining on that list, comment number one, the plans are now signed, notarized, and they're sitting here on the table over there today. Item 1B is the first of four waivers. It's section 22-404.1.h. Essentially, it's a waiver to request the orientation of the actual plan itself, to face due north. Obviously, you can see the large tracts of land. We tried to fit it on one sheet, so it makes sense for, to be able to view and to consolidate it onto one full plan sheet. So we're requesting that waiver for the orientation. I think the township engineer has supported that. Item 1C is effectively if these modification requests waivers were approved, we'll add the approval date to the cover sheet of the plan. Item 2 is regarding roadway improvements along the public street, particularly Elm Drive in this location. And this would be one potential street, and this would East Tolna Road would be the other potential street. What we've done, we've been back and forth with the township and the engineer, and several staff meetings, and with your solicitor to effectively create a, on sheet number 3, we have note number 5. I can read that for you if you would like.
I have them up there as well.
Okay.
So,
So, yeah, and in summary, it's really notes 5, 6, and 7 on sheet 3. Effectively coordinate with comments number 2, 3, and 4 of this letter. First one is regarding road improvements. Second one is regarding curbing along the frontage of our properties. And 7 is regarding, or number 7 is regarding the sidewalk along the frontage of our properties. So those are the other 3 waivers in addition to the first one regarding plan orientation. So that's what was provided in the letter on August 24th. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Is there any issue with that cemetery? It's in there. It could stay there or is it-
I don't think that I mean, I think
It's already been.
It's been moved.
yeah,
okay, I saw it on there. I thought they moved the visor
Yeah,
repair.
we got permission to report to the family. Moved all 30 graves over to, New Freedom Cemetery. And created a historic plot there with the flag and everything. So that's all on.
Tim, did you get to look at the last 3 notes on there? You look like that's gonna get the job done with the way it's written.
I've looked at the 3 notes. Let's just go in normal order. I think Todd's gonna.
Yeah, I'd say let's see if there are any more questions first, and then we can have Todd talk a little about how the staff reviewed it and how the planning commission, and kind of look more closely at these. But are there just general questions right now? All right, I think that's it for the moment, but you'll be here if we have any more. Todd, can you give us some background and kind of how the staff
Yeah,
been looking at
as
this
far
and the
as the,
planning commission?
yeah, as far as the waiver modification requests, from the planning commission meeting that was held back in, on August 17th. The first one, which was the plan orientation, staff and planning commission, both recommended the approval of that, request. When you get into, then number 2, 3, and 4, I'm going to kind of combine these all into one because they kind of follow the same path. For the road improvements, the curbs and the sidewalks, the planning commission did make a recommendation that the requests be approved on the condition that there were notes added to the plan, that the 3 items would be addressed during the land development process. And those are the 3 notes that you see before you, and I believe are in your packet as well. I know during planning commission that there was, and I don't remember all the different terms, but there seemed to be a sticking point around a single word addressed, I think versus required. So ultimately, the planning commission did agree with the term addressed versus required. Staff believes it should be required. Because at the point it gets to the land development plan, those are going to be required. If at that point in time, when they get the land development plan, they see a reason why they should be waived, then they need to come back with a new request. under the land development plan.
Yeah, I think with these notes, they need to be a lot clearer than they are and what we're expecting and requiring. And I do certainly believe that the word address means nothing to me. I think that does need to be changed to required. I guess the other concern I have, and I think it depends on how you read this, but you have Elm Drive that's going to go along both of the lots. And I would think the development on any one of those lots should trigger improvements the entire length of Elm Drive, that we're clear that it isn't just done along the lot that's being developed when that time comes. And I guess I would let the solicitor tell me if he thinks this covers that or not.
Well, we're going back to the question you asked me, Mr. Brown.
Right.
Which I think is this language good enough? They're took it away.
Sorry.
So, the planning commission and their attorney, Mika Driscoll, between them came up with this language, which is what has come through from us. We all know what's trying to be accomplished. I think we're doing the right thing in letting the landowner know that we're not going to require any of these improvements now when we're doing the subdivision. But we do feel, the township feels that it's going to need to be done in the future when the land development plan comes back. So that's what we're looking for, is language that both parties can agree on and say, we will defer it until then, and we'll make sure that we get the resolution that everybody's happy with at that time. Is addressed good enough? Is required the appropriate word? Well, there I got to defer to you guys, right? That's your decision. You
Right.
need to decide what's going to make you comfortable on this.
I do want to add a clarification if I can. I have the incorrect language on the wall because there was an amendment that was submitted that identifies lots 1 and 2. And what I'm showing up there does not show that. And
Yeah, I thought we
while
had
we're
some.
chatting here, I'm trying to find Josh's email.
And it's correct on the plan sheet, it's correct on the plan sheets, it's correct on the.
Yeah, what you gave us in our packet does have that. And that's what I was,
Has the lot 1 and 2.
yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to, is that it says that, the length of, well, if you put it up there, it'll be easier. But it's just, just my opinion, I would want to see either development on either lot trigger the need to do the improvement to Elm Drive totally, not just along the lot that's being developed. I'm not sure if this says that or not.
Can I read, just for the sake of the audience, what the note
Right.
is? Regarding the road improvements, any applicable road improvements under Saldo section 22-505.3.b to the length of Elm Drive abutting both lots 1 and 2 or East Tawna Road will be addressed with the approval of any future land development plan. So it's very similar to this. It's just referencing lot 1 and 2. What they revised and put on the plan.
Right.
Just forwarded to
Putting
you
both lots.
the plan that Juan Lucas most recently sent me. I would assume that has the right language. When I see you put something on the wrong side, I just assume that it's right.
Don't ever assume. I don't.
Normally it is.
Are there thoughts from the rest of the board?
On that point?
Yeah.
I would say I'm in agreement with you that if they're doing one, they need to do the whole thing. Because we don't know what the time frame is from the time one lot's been developed, that another one is.
Right.
And if half the road's done, with the other half isn't.
It could be a problem.
Exactly.
I would go with, use the word require at this point, so it's in the record.
And address could be in any number.
Yep. Or it means,
You know.
can mean nothing.
Hardship and
Right.
something, roughly address it. But yes, that's what. That's your.
I'd like to speak. Ron Lucas, I'm an attorney with Stevens Lee in Harrisburg, representing the applicant. We can't take this just in a vacuum. We've been before the staff well, probably most of this year or longer. We've been going to staff meetings. We have, first meeting at the planning commission was actually in July. They made the recommendation after much discussion, because this is just a subdivision plan of 2 lots. That's all it is. And there's farms. So if the one farm puts on, let's say they just put a storage building, and that's the land development plan, that doesn't require all the improvements. So we don't want to burden the whole property just by saying it's required. After the discussion at the planning commission meeting, this was the wording they came up with. Because there wasn't a planning commission meeting in August, the minutes of the meeting haven't been approved, so they're not on your website. But Nika Driscoll listened to the tape, at least what she told me was she listened to the tape of the meeting. So she got the exact wording that the planning commission used in their motion. And this is what she gave me, and that's what we put on the.
We understand, we understand that.
The whole thing is, none of the, we don't want to say that these improvements are required because it's going to be a land development issue. The subdivision doesn't create the need for them. That's why we put addressed. And if you're, for example, the ordinance says sidewalks, if they're to connect to another development, or they go to a community facility in a non-residential district. This is non-residential. So sidewalks wouldn't be required normally on this plan. Curbing, I think everybody seems to agree at this point in the staff meetings that they probably don't want curbing there, because then you have to put inlets and drainage and everything like that. And it's better just to take the stormwater off the road. There's been general consensus on that. No action, but consensus. As to the road improvements, we've just been discussing the road improvements as part of the land development plan, taking it from the driveway up to the end of the property, Keeney Lane, up to the end of lot 2. So it's hard to look at this in a vacuum, because there's been a lot going on, many meetings discussing these issues. Hillwood, which is proposed, it has a land development plan pending for lot 1 at the build industrial building. That is shown, we're doing improvements to Elm Drive from our entrance driveway heading up towards Keeney Drive, because that's the 2 frontage of the 2 lots up there. So we didn't want, we explained to the planning commission, at this time, we don't want to deal with required. We don't want to put the obligation on the lot subdivision to do it, because they're not creating the need for any of that at this time, just lots that are being farmed. And we're saying will be addressed at the time of land development. Now, land development, and it says on the language, abutting both lots 1 and 2. So we're thinking that our thought is that we come in with the plan for lot 1, which we have. We're showing improvements already on Elm Drive from the driveway to Keeney Lane to the north. That was up to the end of the other property. We don't show improvements to toll lots, so that's an issue we discussed. It was never pushed because there's never been improvements on any plans along Tona that we've checked on. And we have wetlands and railroad track there, so we can't widen that anyway. There's too many issues there. And there's not going to be any, the route for trucks, with this being a distribution facility, is going to go up Elm to Forest and then north from there. So we're trying to make the improvements to the portion of the township road that needs the improvements and take it up. And we follow a truck standard that PennDOT has approved up in East Manchester Township, Conewago Township, and Manchester Township. So they approved a truck standard for an existing PennDOT roads to deal with, to be adequate for those. And those places, those roads, PennDOT didn't want really curbing, and they wanted to have the drainage go off the road as much as possible and not have the inlets, because PennDOT doesn't want to maintain them. So that's part of the thing on a PennDOT road. But so that there was a reason we have the word addressed in there, not required, because we don't think they're all required. And the question is, what are the improvements? We're still discussing the improvements. And this has been done in good faith by us and the staff in coming up with that language. And that's what we explained to the planning commission. So they agreed that there would, we didn't write this exact language. They came up with that in their motion after the discussion. And that's what Attorney Driscoll gave me as the wording, gave us as the wording to put on the plan, which we did. And that just happened really. She just gave us the wording on Friday, and Josh just put it on I guess on Tuesday. So we've just come up with that and he put that on the sheet. So we don't want to, we would request it. And we don't think it's necessary to say that these improvements are required because they may not all be required. Nobody may want curbing. Nobody may want sidewalks on your ordinance. We don't think they're required at all. But we didn't fight that issue. We said, let's just address it on land development plan. If
Let's-
somebody puts in a facility, it's going to have a lot of pedestrian, that's different. But this, under your ordinance, it's not required to put a sidewalk.
Well, we heard you say all that before, so let's address that. One, let's back up. Typically, we would make these requirements at the time there's a subdivision many times. So you're asking that that be put off, if you would, until the lots are developed. I don't think we have an issue with that, but that's kind of the beginning. We have a mechanism if you think something's not required when development takes place, and that's our waiver. So if you think it's not required at that time, then that's the time you come back and ask for it. But I believe at this time, as our ordinance says, that these items are required, and there is a tool for you to come in at the time, since you don't know maybe what that development is, and ask for us to waive that requirement. But I believe you've heard from the board, we're strong about meeting those requirements. We don't need today to debate what improvements are going to require on Elm Drive. I'm not sure we're in agreement on what they should be, but that comes at the time of development. We're not debating that here, but we're also emphasizing that these are requirements and they're requirements of our ordinance. And this is not the time for us to waive those requirements, that should come as we look at the individual land development plans. I think that's, if I'm speaking for the board, I think that's what I'm hearing. And as far as, just one other thing, as far as the staff and the planning commission, they recommend, and we consider those recommend, and we take them very seriously. We have good people on our planning commission and good people on staff, but sometimes we have more information than they do. Sometimes time alters things, or we just feel a little different. Ultimately, that decision is right here with these 5 people, taking into account what they said, but that doesn't direct what we do, which you seem to be inferring that it should. So we're looking at our language and what we're comfortable with. That's what the board's going to address.
Apologize, I'm not inferring that that's what you have to do. It's clearly staff and planning commission recommending body, no question there. The problem I have is that our waivers, if this language, these notes are put on to support our waivers, it's saying sidewalks are required. And then we come back with the land development plan and said, well, the property owner already agreed to that improvement or curbing or whatever the road standards are. If that's the case, then we can't go ahead because, I mean, that's the problem. We're trying to help the property owners by giving them what they, and Mr. Robinson has indicated, this has been something they've been trying to do for years. So we're trying to get that done. We are only purchasing lot 1, but we understand to do our development, the staff knows that we're not avoiding improvements to Elm Lane up to Keeney Drive. That's been part of all the discussions at the staff meetings. And we discussed that a little bit, not really too much, but in detail. But the language, if you just change that word to required, then we come back and you say, well, you have to put in curbing, you have to put in sidewalks, you have to put in all these other things. Wait a minute, that's not what we were, that's not was our understanding because we asked for a waiver of those requirements. But if we have these notes on and it says required, how do we change that?
Well, you're asking us to do a waiver when we don't really know, as you said, what's going to happen on those lots. And until we see that, I don't think it's reasonable to expect us to waive something that is unknown to us at this point in time. Again, it doesn't, if you have a good case, then obviously we would give great consideration to a waiver at the time. But today, who knows what happens there? So I think that it's just a very weak approach in my mind if we use the word address, which means nothing to me.
Well, you just say we're deferring it. That's all we're saying. Deferring it until, unless we want to change address to deferred. Or deferred until, and then it'll be addressed. That's the whole thing. Deferred and will be addressed at the time of the land development plan. because you don't know what's gonna go in. If no real major development goes into lot 2, then they may not necessitate improvements along the road. So that's why we're just asking that, look, we're gonna deal with this on land development plan, but we don't want a requirement that when we come back, we've got a land development plan, we've already given up the right to waive this.
No, you haven't. You can ask for a waiver. You haven't given that up.
Well, if property owners have already agreed to something, then we have a much harder time getting a waiver. Said, well, now we want a waiver. Well, you agreed to the requirement of the subdivision plan.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think this
Well-
board is very careful and considers carefully when a waiver, and if it's justified, we don't have a problem giving that. Would you like to yield to Phil back there? He's got his hand up.
I will.
Okay, it's up to you. You want to yield to him?
I don't understand where there's a concern. I do understand the word required, and required says required. So, you know, if it's required and you come back, how are you going to undo that? And you say this board, how do you know this board will be here then? You know, things change.
Whatever
I've
board.
been through situations where in New Freedom, a board changed and everything that we had discussed and everything that was on the plate and everything that was going to happen was 100% undone because of something like this. So when you say required and you put that on that plan is reported at the courthouse, I don't see how you undo that. So I do see, if you say at that time when there's actually going to be dirt moved and something happening, that you'll address that. And it's either you get the waiver or not. You can turn down a waiver then too. You can turn it down just as easily then as you can now. But to put that on the plan that says required, then that changes the whole thing if this board changes. And I can guarantee you, it's a good chance that somebody on this board changes.
What's our ordinance say, Phil? It says required.
So we're asking for a waiver at the time of subdivision, not at land development.
Right.
And I think that's a fair request. I really do. I don't understand why it's become such an issue when I don't think it's an issue. You know, and to say that either lot is developed, you have to do it all. If the lot that's on the 851 side of 8 Elm Street is developed, there's no new traffic on lot 1. So why in the world would you develop that road if there's no additional traffic there? That's not the bigger issue. In my mind, the bigger issue is you put a note on the plan that says required. And in my mind, that gets reported and it says it's required. If you put on their address, this board can turn down that it's going to come up again at land development and you can turn it down, right? I mean, that waiver would have to be addressed at land development time because it is part of the land development issue. So at that time, you can say, no, we're not going to waive. That's just my opinion.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Where was staff on curbing sidewalks?
Well, we have, and I do have some concerns based on some comments that the attorney made. No, I'm sorry, attorney.
Lucas.
Is it
Lucas.
Lucas. You know, several times you had talked about making improvements to Elm Drive from your entrance to Keeney, which is at this point. You said that repeatedly.
Yes, we've discussed that.
But there's also been discussions and as the position changed of the developer, you brought plans into staff where the improvements ran from Tawna Road clear to the right of way at 851. Is that no longer being considered?
We don't know. That's what we have to have a discussion. There's not enough right of way. So we have to discuss things like that. Those are discussions we have to have with staff. There was an idea that somebody wanted to say, what would happen if we took it up there? I think we showed it, but it can't be constructed because there's not enough right of way between the PennDOT facility and the commercial property on the west side of up there. And we can't force anybody to give us right of way, especially PennDOT.
You can't force, but you can.
PennDOT,
No, but there's
governments are gonna have
There's
to
room on the
involve.
true value side.
Well, they have a plan, the township, but I don't know if the township required them to give right of way on.
Well, and I'm not sure the board is aware of this or not. Through these discussions from probably the very beginning of the process, staff is of the strong opinion that Elm Drive is going to have to be improved for its entire length. based upon wording in our saldo, that it has to be, their particular use has to be on a collector road or a road that's built to the standards of a collector. And there's been core tests and everything, and it does not meet the standards of a collector. So that's why there's been these discussions about what's going to get improved and to what point and so forth. The last discussion we had, your folks came back and had a plan from Tawna to the right-of-way line of 851. And we made it very clear that that wasn't acceptable because we're gonna have what, 10 feet between the right-of-way line and then the
Well,
851. So
We're talking
Um,
about a major overlay of elm, and it has to be tapered to get to the intersection. So we can't do the whole improvement there. We'll have to taper it. It may have to be 10 feet, 20 feet, talking about 6 or 8 inches of overlay. So it's gonna be quite a bit of tapering to get down
you're telling me there's no other streets that tie in? You need that kind of distance to taper? I'm not
there.
understanding.
But if you're gonna have to go down at least 10 feet, maybe longer. I don't know. I'm not a construction person.
They
I know-
they can notch that, they can excavate it, they can go right up to the shoulder of the
Well-
existing road.
We've said we don't wanna touch,
Right, I understand. You don't want to get into PennDOT's
we
right
don't
away.
wanna get penned off for touching their road. I've had that issue already with the connected to an inlet. So, I mean, that's all
But-
need to be discussed, because we've talked many options. And we've come up with a standard that meets a sufficient standard based on core borings and us increasing the vertical and widening the road. And we think it'll meet the sufficient standards for the use there. And I think that's what we've been discussing. There's been a lot of back and forth and discussing, but we're not finished yet. If we were finished with the discussions, we'd be here with the land development plan, but we're not. It's gonna take some more time. But we can't build a building without having adequate access. Now, what that means, we're trying to work with the township to do that. We don't want too wide of a roadway because our consultants say that just invites, in their experience, trucks to park along there. It's too wide of a cartway. So we're trying to work on all of that. Curbs aren't anywhere in this area, so without curbs, you can put the drainage inside. So there's a lot of issues being discussed by the engineers. We're not finished yet. But we clearly see, as Mr. Rum said, these are issues that should be addressed at the time of land development. We're addressing them and discussing them right now. We're not finished discussing them because that's why we're not here with the land development plan. All we're asking you tonight to do is approve the plan waivers. And the 3 waivers, 2, 3, and 4, subject to these notes that are already on the plan, that these issues will be addressed at the time of land development. That's all.
Well, your discussion makes me feel even stronger that regarding the road, we should use the word required. Because it sounds like you're already trying to evade what might be required. So one of the things I might offer to the board is maybe we would look at, I'm looking at it as note 5, but anyway, that with the road, we use the word required. With the curbing and the sidewalks, maybe we could change the word addressed so it would be deferred until approval.
That's kind of direction I'm going. I'm trying to see what staff thought about the curbing. From a drainage situation, and all the additional things that can come with that, and I'm not overly sold on whether we need sidewalks. I don't wanna not have them if we are going to need them, because we don't know what's going in there. We don't know if it's gonna connect to anything that would require it. But, I would be in agreement that as part of the road improvements, it would need to be required. The other one could be potentially deferred. But Todd, what did staff say about sidewalks and curbing?
Well, as Attorney Lucas mentioned, we are talking about that. At this point in time, I don't think that we would recommend curbing, but we still have a lot of discussions to go on.
Okay.
So, but here's my question. Looking at note number 5 for road improvement, section 22505.3B. Do we all agree that under the subdivision plan, that's required with this plan to be addressed?
By the ordinance.
Yes.
The ordinance says Yes, the ordinance says that,
Okay,
but that is, if you're doing.
yeah,
a
but I'm
res-
just asking, is
it
that
says
what the
that,
ordinance?
And
Okay.
that's why you have the waiver procedure. if
Right,
it's not
okay.
Needed.
So if we go into number 6, the curbing, section 22-603.1. Under the zoning under the ordinance, the SADO, for this subdivision plan, does the ordinance require?
The ordinance requires
Okay,
for the curbing, correct?
correct, okay. And then the sidewalks, there could be some debate because of the language about whether it leads to a public.
Yeah, I don't think there's
Facilities,
any
whatever.
debate, because it says unless you connect a community, another development sidewalk or a community facility,
Yeah.
and neither one is.
Well, there is, I guess there's
So
some
that's-
debate whether there's the
that's why
park
it
and
should be
ride is a
addressed.
community facility across the street.
But there don't be sidewalks there.
Well, if you take that approach, there will never be sidewalks. Someone's got to start.
They didn't start. They didn't start.
Well, there was the previous board, and I can tell you this board has taken a very different approach because we need sidewalks in the township.
Well,
In
I
fact,
think-
but let's get back to those 3. So under this plan, those 3 are required. And do we agree that those very same 3 would be required under the land development plan?
unless there's waivers granted for all or a portion
Correct.
of those requirements.
So I guess my question is, I'm not understanding the objection to the term required versus addressed, because it said will be required with the approval of the land development plan. And as you stated, you need to come back and you need to get those anyway.
That's exactly
Right.
what I'm saying. Because the owner is requiring it. You're reporting the plan that says it's required.
At the time of the future land development,
And.
Okay.
this Plan is locking that in without.
but you have to do that anyway, correct? If you do a land development plan, it's required.
But the difference is, it's still, Mr. Robinson said, if the plan goes on and says the property owner agrees it will be required, that, then we're going for a waiver, and the township says, well, you already agreed to that, your seller already agreed to that, therefore you have to do it, we're not gonna grant you a waiver.
Well,
That's why we're asking,
if you
if we
keep,
said the waiver is just for this plan, that's all we're asking for.
but if you keep it as addressed today for this plan, that terminology doesn't change the action of this board when a land development.
Well,
plan
maybe
comes.
the problem is we took the exact language of the planning commission, which we thought all of us thought that night was sufficient. But I think the thing is, if those language was changed to the, are waived solely for the purpose of this subdivision plan. Or, that's what we thought will be addressed, but we decided at the time of the subdivision, at the time of the land development.
Address is meaningless, doesn't mean anything.
Well, will be what he decided at the time of the approval of the future land, of any future land development. So if it's decided, that's not addressed, and that says it will be decided at that time. That would seem to take care of the concern.
It's all semantics, but I feel better about this side of this. If I don't fall out of my chair, sorry. I feel better about decided or determined.
I probably would be okay with that on 6 and 7, but
Yes.
I think we need to be very clear on the road that it's going to be required. And why try to move around that at this point in time? The world ought to know, you should know that's going to be required. And we're telling you that if we put that word in there.
Well, if we come in with a plan that staff agrees to and says, okay, you don't have to be 32 feet wide, you can be 30 feet wide, or whatever. Example, so you don't have to be 35 feet wide, you can be 32 feet wide. And we say, well, everybody agrees it shouldn't be that too wide because it'll invite trucks to park there. And we ask for waivers, and well, you already agreed it would be required, so we're not going to give you the waiver. That's why I'm saying it's important with the land development plan when you know the exact use is going in. So I think if you say decided, we're not waiving those improvements at the time of land development. It'll be decided at that point. And then that doesn't, if for some reason we don't go ahead with this project, then the property owners are bound by that, and then they're gonna have a hard time, maybe a year from now or 10 years from now.
I don't think they will. I think if they ask for reasonable modifications or waivers, that the board will grant those. I mean, that's the time it should be done, when we know what's happening there.
And that's what we're doing. We're just saying that we decided at the time of the land development. That's all we're asking,
Okay,
to put them to that time. So
does the board have any more questions? I think,
I don't think we can debate it any further.
right. Well, let's do this. Let's look at them one at a time. And the first one is plan orientation. I would think that's an easy one. So let's look at each one of those and motion one at a time. So is there a motion on the orientation of the plan?
So move.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion that we would approve the waiver regarding orientation of the plan. Any other questions on that one? All right, let's vote on that one. We'll
Sorry,
vote.
you're starting with me.
We'll vote.
Aye.
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 So 5 votes to the affirmative. We would approve the first waiver, which regards plan orientation. Let's look at curbs and sidewalks next. I would think they're similar. And is there,
I make a motion to change the language from addressed to,
determined or,
Decided.
yes, it's either
Earlier,
decided or
decided
determined.
or determined.
Determined.
I think it's a better word.
Change it from address to determined for sidewalks and for the curb.
Comments from any of the board? Comments from the solicitor? Comments from Todd?
I think Ron Lucas would agree with me that the only thing worse than 2 lawyers trying to wordsmith something is 3. And I do feel like you were correct, Mr. Bose. A lot of this is semantic.
Yes.
No matter what word we put it here, there's going to be 2 parties at the time of the land development plan. So we're pulling back and forth as far as what would be the appropriate and applicable improvements. And I think that language is at the beginning of all of those notes. All applicable improvements will be made then. So I don't have any problem with any of the words that are being proposed here. I think they're all going to get us to the same place.
So you did that as a motion, did you not?
Yes, I would make a
Okay.
motion to change, to approve modification, excuse me. Yes, modification request 3 and 4, with the change of to be addressed to say will be determined
Okay.
for the sidewalks and for the curb.
Okay. Anybody care to second that? I'll go ahead and second it. Discussion before we vote.
Is that just for sidewalk we're talking about?
Sidewalks and
Just
curbs,
Sidewalks and curbs.
Sidewalks and curbs.
not the road yet. Okay, so this would be for the 2 waivers regarding curbing and sidewalks. So I have a motion and a second, changing address to be determined.
Aye.
Vote.
Aye.
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 5 votes to the affirmative, so we have made that change. And that leaves us with the roadway improvements. So are there any thoughts on that from the board?
The solicitor had mentioned something about if there was a barn or a farming structure that would be built on one of the properties, that it could trigger this. I don't
But
see that, I don't see that as I don't think that could be a problem. I don't think that would.
That's the waiver process.
True.
And-
But if they are working to develop one of them from a farming standpoint, I don't think.
Yeah, but as far as farming, there is a section in there that doesn't apply to agriculture. But also this note says with the approval of a land development plan. So if it remained agricultural and they put up an ag building, it doesn't require land development.
I meant a storage building. It could have been a storage building
Okay.
for, just warehouse for tractor trailers, parking or something like that, or
Okay.
RVs. large
And that
storage
would
buildings.
require. a-
That
a
would
land
require
development.
land development, something like that, that's not a large traffic generator or something like that. You have a lot of these buildings now that just store RVs inside. And, they're not in and out that often frequently, so. Maybe go to Penn State weekend or gone this summer, but they're not highly used. So there's something like that. That's what I was saying. One of these could become that, maybe both of them come back. Who knows? We don't know
I
that.
think that's covered a little bit in this note because it does say any applicable or applicable road improvements under Saldo, blah, blah, blah. It says will be addressed. So the word applicable is kind of key there to what the use might be, I would believe. So I guess I still lean toward thinking that this one should be a little tougher and we should have required, but it is modified by even that word applicable. And it, again, required to the extent that the land development plan looks at it when that time comes. Thoughts from anybody else?
I'd like to see it stay strong. That'd be required. We can give a waiver if it's not necessary.
Anybody want to put something in the form of a motion?
Sounded like you were trying.
Always give the rest of the board a chance. Well, I would make the motion that regarding the road improvements, is that number 5? Is that the same on the note?
It'd be
there?
number 2 on the.
Okay, number 2, that we would just replace the word will be addressed with will be required.
I'll second that motion.
So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion from the board that you're through. The board is voting now. Sorry. We'll go ahead and vote.
Aye.
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 5 votes to the affirmative. So we will be giving approval to defer these, but only if these conditions are met. If they're not met, then we're not approving. So. Right? If I said that right? Okay,
Your
we're,
language on the plan. We're just changing the notes.
yes, you would have to change the language on the plan to this specific
And
language.
by applicable, I want to ask the question, hypothetical, but it may be applicable in this case. If other properties developed on Elm, these properties shouldn't be the only ones that pay for the road. That's a possibility.
That's not something we control.
I know, but I'm saying is if 2 properties come in the same time, it shouldn't be applicable to one property on one side does all the improvements if somebody's developing.
That's another whole series of issues to deal with if and when it happens.
Well, I mean, theoretically,
Right.
it should be applicable to both. That's all I'm saying. It should be fair.
Theoretically, I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
Okay,
And you're right on the applicable, so that's what's applicable at the time. So that's what we can work with. So,
all right. Well, thank you. We're gonna,
are you taking a motion on the plan itself?
That'll be next.
oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. Is that on here, Todd? I can't read it.
Yes.
Fire model subdivision.
Okay. Or there,
I think
we would be, if we make a motion to approve this, it would be subject to all the conditions of the CS.
Yeah, Yeah, if you're ready to make a conditional approval, I would make it conditioned upon
Right,
the language changes that you just made in the modification request, that they're changed, there's notes on the plan, as well as all outstanding comments are addressed in the CS Davidson letter dated August 24th, 2022.
August 24th.
Correct. I think that's-
Okay. Is that your motion?
Yes, I make a motion to approve the final minor subdivision plan. Contingent upon all outstanding information from the CF Davidson letter dated August 24th, 2022, as well as the semantic word changes that were just voted on by this document.
Thank you.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there questions on the motion? We shall vote.
Aye.
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 5 votes to the affirmative, so we have approved the subdivision plan subject to the conditions as stated.
Thank you.
Okay.
If I may ask a question, to whose attention, given there's 2 property owners involved, should the conditional approval letter be sent to that will act as the agent to acknowledge whether or not they accept the,
Probably the engineer, and we can make sure both property owners get it.
okay,
He's already filed the application, I think.
yeah, because someone's gonna have to respond within the 5 days, so
So
I
he
wanna
can,
make sure.
he'll be in touch with both property
Okay.
owners, and Mr. Robinson, to make sure that both are aware of that.
Yep,
coming.
okay,
And, but that'll come out before probably the engineer gets the corrected sheet to you. With the.
yeah, and that's fine, yeah.
Okay, thank you for your time and
Thank you.
discussion.
We appreciate your discussion.
Thank you.
Always good to have that. All right, if we move on, I believe we have an easier one coming up next. This is a topsoil, Todd.
Yeah, this is for Church of Latter-day Saints down on Campbell Road, very similar like we had with Hamilton's Overlook. They are at a point now that they have excess topsoil. They're asking for approval from the Board of Supervisors to remove that. It actually would be taken across the road to the George Phillips farm. He's going to use it on his various farms in the township. Where he is.
We're moving it to his property and he's gonna take where he's.
Yes, so under our zoning ordinance, it requires board approval to be allowed to remove topsoil from the.
I'll make a motion to approve the removal of topsoil from one side of Campbell Road. And on the other side of Campbell Road.
I'll second the motion.
So I have a motion and a second to allow topsoil to be removed from the site of the later day Saints Church. I don't think we care where it goes, but we're allowing it to be removed. Questions? Before we vote, we should vote.
Aye.
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 5 votes to the affirmative, topsoil can be moved. You have in front of you the manager's report. Are there any questions that you wish to address to Todd regarding his report? Anything you want to add or say?
Nothing more.
All righty. We shall move on. We don't have anything written from the solicitor, but we always invite him to report if he so desires.
Pleasure to be here once a year or so.
Pleasure to have you here. All right, we move to zoning officer codes enforcement report. Any questions or comments there? As usual, it's pretty detailed and it stayed pretty steady, and 11 new ones and 12 closed, so made a tiny bit of progress. And I think, Todd, you've picked up on this. A couple of them might be worth just mentioning, kind of things you're putting together to consider when we revise ordinances next time. I don't know if you want to just mention those to the board.
One, probably the most, I call it most glaring, is with our on-lot septic pumping every 4 years, which is a requirement, which is fine. But with an incident that we had just this past year, our ordinance actually requires the septic hauler to submit the pumping tickets to the township, which in itself is fine. That probably works best because they gather them up for all their customers and forward them on to us. However, the way our ordinance is written, if we have a property owner who has not had their septic pumped, and we need to take them to court in order to have that accomplished, the way our ordinance is written, we can't go after the property owner. So we have to make some amendments to correct that. The other thing I think we have to look at closely, and we just had a recent civil or a recent court case down at Judge Sweeney's office. The other thing I think we really need to look at, and I never quite understood it, and it was before everyone's time that's on this board now. If there is a violation for not having your septic pumped every 4 years, It's not a civil complaint. The ordinance actually requires it to be filed as a criminal complaint. And I think that's a bit harsh. I think that's something else that we need to look at.
So just a heads up that
Yeah.
down the road, we'll be seeing those, but they make a lot of sense to me. Any other questions on the, that report?
I just wonder,
Go ahead.
one place there, they can't keep the open space. What's the problem keeping an open space? We have code violations.
That's back on Hastings and
Yeah, what?
yeah, that's an ongoing battle. It's reported on the plan. It's mandated by our ordinance. Some of the property owners want to mow and trim and weed whack and cut all the brush down, so. We're probably at a point, if they don't soon do something, because we've been working with them for quite a long time to get compliance, we'll probably have to file a civil complaint through the subdivision land development ordinance. But I don't want to do that, but
Yeah, and it's been on there quite often. I
yeah,
thought,
And
yeah, it's a continuing.
you can't claim open space as your own.
Yeah.
Yeah. it says it
Yeah,
doesn't
if you
belong to-
recall, it was part of the subdivision, you're required a certain percentage of the property to be open space. And that open space, it's kind of a little bit of a deceiving term because it has to remain natural, wooded, vegetated, untouched. So, yeah,
I have a question for you.
yes.
The farm located at 1274 Oakwood Road. Have they responded at all as far as the
For the
that they
permits,
haven't, building permits?
no, we sent a violation notice. They had 30 days to respond to that. They did not, and we had filed with the district court. So they have probably, I think it's another week or so in order to either become compliant or enter defense at district court.
Well, why I ask you because I think this first started on April 20th, and that was for buildings on the east end of the property. Well, since then, now they're building more stables or stalls or something more towards the west side of the property.
Okay. I'll have to visit some backyards down. Because I'm already familiar. There's the double section that I'm familiar with, off the
Right.
cul-de-sac there.
Right. So you have that on the east side,
Mhm,
then you have main house structure,
mhm.
and then you have a riding stable. And these stalls are being made in between the house and the riding stable.
Okay, we'll look at those. I'm not aware of those, so thank you.
Any other questions or comments on that report? Then we'll move to the maintenance department report. Any questions, comments there? And, or Todd, you may have one or on the signs, maybe at least.
Yeah, just the only thing I wanted to mention, Windy Hill Road closure. PennDOT's telling me that it's supposed to be open probably by mid next week, the week of the 12th. Yeah, so fingers crossed. And as far as the welcome signs, for the board, I put two of the typical ones that I've seen throughout the other municipalities if they have them. And I think I emailed to you the cost.
Yes.
Okay. So we would be looking at for the standard that just is Shrewsbury Township, which is a 12 by 36. 18 of those would be $792.
Are they plastic or metal? Tom?
They're metal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then same with the larger ones that actually say welcome to Shrewsbury Township. Those measure 24 by 36. For 18 of those would be $1,332.
I'm
Can-
sure we're being charged by the letter, but semantics is the word of the evening. I'd rather see it say welcome to Shrewsbury Township. Otherwise, it sounds like we're welcoming Shrewsbury Township.
I agree.
Todd, can both of these sizes be put on like a single pole? Do they take double post or
Oh, no, they'll just go on a standard
Right, okay, so,
single pole.
okay, good.
So the risk of being charged for an extra 2 letters per sign.
Well,
I'd love to see the bigger one.
actually, when you look at the top ones, 12 by 36, the bottom's 24 by 36, so you're doubling height.
True.
And a little more lettering, and they haven't doubled the
Not even double
price.
the price. You're
Yeah,
absolutely right. That's a value right there.
Is there any concern with the size of the sign blocking any,
No, that'll all be with.
where that,
placement.
that'll be where they put them?
Yeah,
Okay,
I thought it'd be easier to read if it's the 24 by 36. People are more likely to see it.
Yeah. Do we need to vote on it?
unless there's, I mean, for something like that, there's a consensus.
I think it'd just be consensus, so
Add 2.
I think I'm correct in hearing the census is the larger sign with the word "to" added after welcome.
And to clarify, spelling. T-O.
Yes. We all good?
Well,
Okay. I think you have a consensus
Okay,
and move forward.
Great.
Anything else on that report?
I have
Anybody?
one question.
Sure, go.
Down area. There is any movement on that? What are we doing?
so we're working with Don, looking to see if he was still here.
All right, but we're.
But no, we're aware of it, it's on our punch list. We ideally want them to take care of it,
Of course, the other one.
yes.
For
those that aren't aware-
I mean, that's solid, but I mean, it's the job.
Yeah, and they were doing excavating and
Yeah.
so forth, but
And for the rest of the board, if they're unaware of what Todd and I are discussing. There's a chunk missing out of Mount Airy Road, traveling, towards, Windy Hill. Which was damaged, when they were cutting in another access road to go back to, I'm assuming that's phase 3 of Suffolk Place.
I think they were just leveling,
Oh,
because phase 3 is up closer to the existing road.
okay, that's it's going back to either one. That's what we're talking about.
And it's still there. I
Yes.
drove by it this afternoon. Okay, anything else? I think under that same thing, Todd, we had this radar summary, and this is where we moved our speed signs to the detour that people were using to get around the closure on Windy Hill to try to have an impact on that traffic slowing down, which seemed to work from what residents say. And if you look at the results, pretty much under the speed limit. So hopefully putting the signs there did have some impact to slow that traffic down.
That people were moving too quickly through there.
Yeah, no, we were getting quite a few calls. Even though it's not an official detour around there on Magnolia. That a lot of people that were local were aware of it and they were using it as a detour. And we were getting quite a few calls about the speed. So we attempted to put cones out, and we had the big slow speed signs and so forth, which are portable and stands. Those disappeared. I don't know whose college dorm they're in, but the cones didn't, none of that seemed to work. So we were doing a radar speed study up on Mount Airy Road, and we were about 3 weeks into that. So I decided that we'll just pull that study for now and place those on each end of Magnolia, hoping when people first turn in, they, are reminded quickly. So it appears to have helped a lot, so.
That's good. It's good to see the results. I appreciate that. You have the CS Davidson report. Are there any questions, comments on that? And you have the staff and planning commission reports. Any questions or comments on that?
Same thing I will ask board to think about, if you recall, maybe about 6-8 months ago, we, for lack of a better term, purged the idle plan file. Some of these have been sitting idle for up to 18 months with no activity. We may want to consider putting them on the agenda to take action on, unless they submit revise plans and become active again. So I have no idea how long some of these may sit on here. Recall we did that with E squared and we were going to do that with Ravenswood on Mount Airy, but they ended up withdrawing that one.
So when would these expire or have they?
Well, they don't have any time limitations to act on them, but they're still on staff. Like the Joe Messina for the Dollar General has been in staff for 18 months and we have not seen anything, any activity on that for well over a year.
I see they're working on that wall down there.
Better not be now.
Well, I
Yeah,
told you that
we-
they get fined for it, but I saw they were working.
Yeah,
on it.
they I think it's in your report.
I saw it.
We issued a stop work order because they're installing the wall, number one, without permits. And number two, it doesn't begin to meet the approved plan. So, and I did drive by there, this evening and the wall's almost completed.
What's that?
I said I did drive by there this evening and the wall's almost completed
So they didn't stop work.
now. So
So what do you?
I'll get, well, South Penn Code Consultants is handling that stop work order because it's a violation under the Uniform Construction Code. So I'll be contacting Kevin tomorrow at South Penn, and then he'll be filing a complaint. District court.
So they had no opportunity to inspect it or anything else if that was
Every-
required.
Anything over 4 feet high requires plans, reviewed plans, approved plans by the code official, and also requires inspections. And we've never seen an application, let alone.
But you could have issues with how they handled stormwater. Do there need to be pipes coming through it?
The
Does it?
highest point of that wall is probably upwards of 10 feet
Yeah,
at the highest point, so.
that's kind of dangerous, not knowing that was inspected and so forth.
Unless you want a new car.
What's your recommendation then about, plans that aren't moving? What do you, recommend?
I think if they're more than 12 months with no activity, which are the first two, Powers and Albany and Joseph Messina. I think we give them notice that we're going to put them on the agenda for action next month, which would be a denial unless they submit revised plans and begin moving forward.
So we'd give them some time to be able to do that.
Yeah.
If they so chose. Otherwise, they'd have to start the process all
Give them
over
the
again.
opportunity if They say, well, look, we need to revise the plan, but we can't get it in here by next month, but we will by the following. month.
Right.
It's gonna at least generate some,
Gives us a chance to see, is it really still out there or is it dead anyway?
but I know the one in particular is there because they're waiting for sewer.
Yeah.
That could be a couple of years.
Okay, I think that makes sense.
But we did that in the past, so I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Do you need a motion or just?
I think consensus is
Yeah.
fine because you'll take any official action next month.
Yeah, I think we're all, yep, we're all good
Okay.
with that. Any other questions on that report? I think just for your, well, let's see, I might be ahead of myself here. We don't have anything for emergency management. I did skip that, but we didn't have any report for that, and probably none was necessary. And I guess you did have here, Todd, an update on the comp plan,
Yeah, I'll probably put that on because that's about an 18-month
right?
process, so I'll probably put it on, may not have too much to report each month, but.
You're meeting once a month though, right?
We meet once a month, and we did meet in August, and it was a very productive meeting. We talked about, what we mainly did in that meeting is we looked at all the objective goals and ways of meeting those from the last. I
Right.
shouldn't say last, but
The 99,
current comp plan, which is from 99, 2000. So very productive meeting. And each municipality went around and talked about what was important to each of our individual municipalities, so.
good. Good. Right, so we have committees next, and I guess just a couple of updates on some of the peer-to-peer studies? I guess, Todd,
Yeah,
you're,
again, I just thought I'd put those on so you know that they're still
It's
out there,
happening.
they're still working on them.
are they both active, both EMS and fire?
Yeah, but if you recall, the fire is, if you recall, EMS, that was kind of put at a standstill for, gosh, well over a year. Simply because the peer-to-peer consultant that,
Right.
ECD had provided ended up resigning promptly, and it took them, I believe it's well over a year before they hired some new consultants. So we do have a new consultant. She seems eager to get moving, and they have started that process. So EMS peer-to-peer study has resumed, I'd say, in the last 6 weeks, become more active, so.
Okay. The sanitary sewer, we have a handout that just, I guess was done at one of the presentations I had that shows you, right, shows you a little bit about what they're looking at, what they're thinking about, what they're planning, and what I guess some of the costs could ultimately be. Well, I don't know that, unless somebody has a specific question,
Yeah, I don't know that I'll have answers for you.
Right.
It's just informational.
I'd say something to peruse and separately maybe get with Todd if there's a question, because we'd have to go back to that group probably for answers. And then courtesy of Dave, we do have a recap of the wellhead protection meeting. It's pretty clear to me, but Dave, if you want to add anything or.
Let's say the meeting was mainly to give clear requirements, for lack of a better term, to an interested party in the Coach Light property about putting in a car wash there. And what they would need to do in order to meet the requirements of the Shrewsbury Borough water protection ordinance, which we also have in the borough. So that's why I'm referencing that specifically. After that, we talked about the soil, contaminated soil for the second time at the property above Coach Lake. They took soil from, I believe, Tom's originally, dumped it there during the 850 Texas Board improvements. That was contaminated. They removed it and they brought in additional soil. It was tested before they brought it in, but apparently their test wasn't as extensive as it should have been. They tested it once it was on site, and they had contamination of arsenic, cobalt, and other contaminants in 2 of the 4 quadrants tested. So they're gonna have to remove it again. So I'm not sure who's doing it, I don't know who's responsible, but boy, they're making a mess. And finish up by basically the Susquehanna River Basin reduce the amount of gallons because the permit had ended for the village and the meadow wells borough uses, and actually cut what they're allowed to take from those by over 50%.
Yeah.
Because of drawdown in the wetlands during the test. So
Do they think will be a potential problem going forward with?
was concerned about the amount of water that they're gonna have, since they don't have that much.
No. Thank you. Appreciate the report. The supervisor's comments, you have a short report from me. If there are questions, you can grab me anytime. Is there anything other supervisors would like to comment on? Nobody? All right, we'll move forward. You have in front of you some construction meeting minutes. I don't know if there are any specific questions. And hearing none, I guess we move on to some change orders, and I think, Todd, we want to take these one at a time. Yeah. You want to lead with the first one?
Yeah, the first one, identified as township change order number 12 in the amount of $4,791. Has to do with the rafters. One of the trusses, and bottom line is they had to add one that was missed in the design and the plan. It's in, it was required, it needs to be there. So I would suggest that the board, recommend that the board approve it, but under protest. And note that we believe it's the result of the design flaw.
And something
And we're just tracking what they
Right.
are to the end of the project.
we'll be tracking it to the end of the project. And then, I don't want to use the word address, but then appropriately act. Yeah,
So moved.
Too soon, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
What's that?
all right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
So the motion and second is to approve this change, but also to note we're doing that under some protest, and we'll be reevaluating it at the end of the project with a number of others we've put in that category. We shall vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
5 votes to the affirmative, so that has been approved. Or approved under duress, I guess. We have a second one. This is a credit.
Yeah, this is change order number 13, township change order 13. This is a credit in the amount of $17,192. And this is for, if you recall, we were going to do the bluestone and the foyer and so forth, but again, because of a design and plan error, and issues we ran into with the elevation going into other rooms and ADA, we can no longer put that in there. So we're going back to the polished, stained concrete floor. So what you'll see on the top there is the credit for the ceramic tile. And then down below, you'll see what the additional cost is. So the tile was originally $23,028 is the full credit. The cost to do the dye polished concrete is $5,836, which gives us the total credit of $17,192. I believe those numbers are fair, and I would recommend that the board approve that.
I'll make a motion then to approve change order 13 for the net credit amount of $17,192.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve change order number 13. Any further questions? We'll vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
5 votes to the affirmative. That is approved. Now we have another one that we might think differently about.
Yeah, this is a township change order number 14. If you recall, we asked them to put together the cost estimate of proposed change order to pull out the landscaping in the township maintenance crew to do that. We did get that. The total credit that they're showing is $8,519. I'm not a landscaper by trade, but I know with a couple of trees that we purchased here and there for the parks, I wasn't quite sure whether we could even buy all the material for this credit, let alone install it, mulching and all that. And I did reach out to a community resident who is a reputable landscaper and in the audience with us. And just as to give a quick overview without getting into the weeds too much. And he estimated that we probably, if we went out, we'll probably be in the neighborhood of 15,000, and that did not include mulch or soil prep. So The reason I reached out to him is because this just did not look right to me. I think it was far too low. So my recommendation to the board would be for this cost, let them do it. It's in their contract. And I would recommend that you deny this change order.
Yeah, the shame is that it takes away an opportunity for us to save some money, which we would have done by having our crew do it. But it didn't sound like in the meeting like there was any willingness for them to take another look at this number.
No, because we had our every 2 week construction status meeting this morning. And I did talk to the contractor and Murphy and Dittenhafer about this change order and what my thoughts were, as well as the next one. So
How extensive are the plans that we have in place for that? Are they gonna short us? Because they're only using $8,500 for it, or we're still gonna get everything?
we're going to get everything because it's part of
Draw.
the specifications for all the landscaping is in the plan, or in the plans. And it's part, so it spells out every tree, the caliper size and everything. So we'll be able to easily go through to make sure that we receive what we were supposed to receive.
In that case, I would make a motion to deny change order 14, the amount of credit for $8,519.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to deny change order. Is that 15?
14.
14, thank you. Change order 14 for the reasons noted. Any questions? We shall vote.
I would just like to thank our expert for suffering through an hour and a half. I meant to see. I'm set for everything I'll see. Oh, okay, all right. I'm sorry, you called for a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5 votes to the affirmative. We have denied that change. And hopefully everybody realizes that Brian sits on the planning commission and is its vice chair. So it's nice to have a representative from the planning commission that can kind of see what happens with the things that they do as well as be available. I kind of thought about putting you on the spot earlier and saying, hey, what do you? But I thought we were moving okay. So, Brian Almany. Right, Brian. So he is the vice chair of the planning commission. Okay, we have,
serving as chair though.
yes, he has, and doing well too, from what I've seen.
Chair must be
Busy.
convincing.
All right, change order number 15. This is a request, and you'll see attached from Rigid Ply Rafters, has to do with the glue lam material that ECI ordered back in December of 21. They guaranteed the price up for 30 days from the date of the contract. 4 months later, it prompted a change order between Rigid Ply Rafters and ECI, not with us, and for an additional $7,770.86. My recommendation is that you deny this. There are no provisions within our contract for any escalation clauses for materials. The other thing is, as I explained to ECI this morning, is while I understand that it's a cost that they weren't looking to bear, it's also a cost that the taxpayers that you want to pass along to us that we were not planning to bear. And the other thing is, I said to keep in mind is if the board were to approve this, what's the next one that you're going to come and ask for?
Right.
And then the question I ask is, and if we do this for ECI, we have 3 prime subs out there with plumbing, electrical, and HVAC. How do we tell them we're not going to approve any, increase in cost? So I just don't think that's a path the township wants to take, so my recommendation to the board is that you deny that request.
So,
I'll second.
A motion and a second to deny change order request 15. Questions? Call for,
Yeah.
go ahead.
The $7,700, what percentage increase did we prior to the council?
It says, what I'm getting here, it doesn't tell us what the total is, but he did throw out a number.
Yeah, what,
Said it was around 100, he
Was-
said 100 or 150.
it was around 100,000. That's the number I remember from the meeting.
So in other words, what I'm reading here, there was a change order that they approved on December 21st in the amount of 4,500. And now March 23rd, they want to give them another increase of 7,700. And, they're a business, and I understand that, but we have a responsibility. I explained to them, to the taxpayers, and we have limited funds as well. So I said, I told them what my recommendation for them to do, so. They won't be surprised.
Any other questions before we vote? We shall vote.
aye.
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 Aye. Boy, you were fast. Okay, so we have denied, denied change order number 15. Right, we have, several applications for payment. I assume they've all been reviewed by the architect that are appropriate.
Yeah, if I could note before you actually vote on those. I have their ECI construction application number 9, which we approved
Right,
last month. We did not issue a check. Murphy Dittenhafer, they did catch that they were actually requesting a release of a partial withholding of their retainings, which are not eligible for. So the reason I put this on the agenda is simply so that we can get it on the record and in the minutes that application number 9 that the board approved last month has been voided and has not been paid.
do we need to take any action on that?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so we are looking at approving applications for payments 2 through 6.
Correct.
Okay,
And they all have been reviewed. They all have the contractor and Murphy Dittenhafer's signature on those with the exception of ECI. And that was emailed to me today with ECI's signature on it. So ECI has reviewed, Murphy Dittenhafer has reviewed all the applications for payment and they signed off and approved those. And if you're comfortable with it, you can do those.
we can do all those in one motion.
Did you say something about needing, for the record, the fact that, application number 9 was voided?
Mhm.
Motion? Or not?
No,
I don't think-
It's on the record now.
Right. solicitor confirmed that we didn't need to act on that.
In that case, I make a motion to approve. 5
2 through
application for payment.
2 through
PCI Construction, Low Bar Incorporated, 2 to Man Plumbing and Heating, and 1 to North Bay Mechanical for the dollar amounts listed in the agenda.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second to approve applications for payments 2 through 6. Questions? We shall vote.
Aye.
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 5 votes to the affirmative. We have approved those 5 applications for payment. That moves us to bid award in the administration building where we're sitting today.
Yeah, as you know, we had our second round of advertising during the month of August. Yeah, they actually drew a lot of attention and interest. However, with that said, we showed the building, I think it was 6 or 7 parties during the month of August. I have contact information of those that requested at least information from 15, 16 different parties. However, on Friday, September 2nd, we did not receive any bids the second round.
That allows us to.
So my understanding is how we can set a price, we can publicize that price and that we are offering the building at X amount of dollars, and we can negotiate any offers that come forward. Is that
How are
correct?
we determining the price?
Did you, I sent out an informational text. Did you see it? If you didn't know, go over it. That's fine.
My apologies.
Yeah, that's okay.
He had a late night.
Yeah, what I did was, I took into consideration, we did have an appraisal. I took into consideration the one bid that we received. Took into consideration what the township paid for the building and what real estate has increased since that time. And I also have taken a look at real estate, commercial real estate. First in this area. And really, there's not much around here. The closest thing I found that's, I'm gonna say, probably the most similar to this property, is down on the corner of Elm and Tawna, or Warehouse and Tawna. This building is 14,000 square feet and 2 stories. That building is 12,000 square feet and 2 stories. That building was built in 92. The first building here was built in 90, and there were 2 additions since that time. The other property is on 1.6, I forget offhand, 1.67. Thank you, 1.67. He does text up. 1.67 acres, and we have 2.01. That particular property, they are asking 816,000. I believe we're in a little better location, being along the Susquehanna Trail, close proximity to exit 4. So my recommendation for the board would be that we list the property and advertise it for 899,000. And then we can decide if we get any offers, then we negotiate what we may or may not let it go for.
Yeah, what was the street address again for the other one? Is it something 94?
Thank you. Yeah, 15842 Elm Drive.
Okay, so that's the second building.
No, it's
First one, right on the
I
corner.
think that one's right on the corner.
Because there's, okay, I drove by there tonight, and then one is empty.
Yeah, this one's
Second
empty.
building.
The
The
second
other
one's
one has said for lease, and there are people occupying them.
See if I can pull up here without. This county assessment map does not always work.
The old machine shop.
I was gonna say Eagle Machine.
Yeah.
Is it on the corner or would it be the second one in?
So,
You're coming,
Is it on the corner with Tawna?
you're coming toward Lincoln Hill.
Southeast
down
corner.
Paula,
it's the second road, it's on the left side of that.
left side.
But is it on the corner or is it the second? Okay,
Yeah, it's the old Eagle
Did
Machine.
that been for sale for quite some time. I had a problem with one 2 years ago.
must be on, is it on and off the market? Probably, yeah, because it said it was on the market for 75 days, but.
Been quite a while.
And I,
Basically been on the market since they closed up.
I located that.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry. My apologies.
So you're suggesting 8.9?
899.
And 99 cents.
Well, I didn't want to be like Walmart and say $899,999.99.
A lot of time.
So it's better 900,000 than you got change, you buy a newspaper.
They're never gonna realize that's what's not out.
Yeah.
Do we need to make a motion on?
Yeah, you're gonna need to make a motion to authorize the property to be listed for sale. And at what asking price?
I mean, I guess my hopes were we'd be a little higher than that, but on the other hand, we don't want to go to the point where we discourage people, you think what it would cost to build this today, today's prices, it would be a lot, but, again, you gotta find a tenant that needs storage and bays and all that. So you're probably, based on the appraisal we had and the one bid we got, that's probably not a bad number.
And one thing I think also, and Jeff's alluding to that, is, you know, the question, and there was discussion, we have a Shipley lease.
Right.
Here in the back that, I believe there's another 3 years on the original full lease. And then at Shipley's option, no one else's, they could extend it one more time for up to 4 years and 11 months.
So they could be there as much as 8 more years.
Correct.
But
And also keep in mind, when we get an offer, they also have the right of first refusal.
Shipley does.
Shipley,
You have approached them, right?
yes, yep. They're
Right,
fully
to see if they
sold.
have,
They
What-
actually requested a copy of our floor plan.
but they would just sit back and see, you know, if somebody else bid, if they were interested, and then
But
exercise their
so
first
I put
approval.
that out for a starting point for the board discussion.
Thank you.
Thoughts?
I'm gonna make a motion that we go with it.
So you would be 2 motions, one that we would go ahead and
With the.
advertise,
It can all be one motion.
right, or in one
We'll Go
motion,
ahead and advertise and at the price
right?
Scott, that Jeff already had, Todd's listed,
899.
9,000.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Is there a second? Okay. We have a motion and a second that we authorize advertising for sale, and we do it at $899,000. Questions? We'll vote.
Aye.
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 All right, give Todd,
Off the edge of the building requirements. So you can just look up the property anyway that you see there.
all right,
You're listing it for sale by owner, that's essentially what we're doing here. You should be prepared for a lot of inquiries from realtors.
Yeah.
Who will say, I'm gonna buy a property. I'm gonna do this listing. You have questions? You're gonna get flooded with answers, I'm sorry, with requests.
Right.
For information and from you what all bids.
right.
You're gonna need some mechanism.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure you're right. We have somebody that's very capable of handling that.
Good. That's not too
Right. Okay. We have just a couple items of old business. I think just an update from Todd. The lines are painted. I did see that.
Yes, lines are painted. The other thing is, I'll just show you real quick, I know it's getting late. All ready for dinner. But we couldn't talk about time. This was the day, this was the day at 7:24. If you recall, we purchased one camera to just try to test it out to see how it works for security in our parks. This is the one we placed at Windy Hill Park. Seems to work out pretty well.
Good picture.
Yeah.
Same things.
And it's solar powered, so given it's solar powered and the camera, total cost was $165. I don't think it was too bad for that price.
Oh.
What's the brand?
It's Ring.
What?
Ring,
Oh, wow.
Ring, like the doorbell cameras and things.
yeah, you even has sound,
That way you can get it Home Depot there.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we can actually speak through it as well.
Oh, that would be so much fun.
You know, tell them stop throwing stones.
So that's interesting.
Nonetheless, we have it. I did reach out to SYC to ask if they would have any objections to us mounting them on the outside of their building. So we could get the corners covered and so forth, and also tap into their Wi-Fi Wi-Fi, and we did receive a response back today that they had no objections to either of those, so.
So we currently have one, we're adding 5 more.
Correct.
Great.
So I would ask if the board's okay with that, if you would authorize that purchase just for Windy Hill Park at this time. Miller would be the next one, but we need to explore our options for Wi-Fi.
I make a motion to approve the purchase of the giant ribbon on 5 additional cameras.
Correct.
Second.
You know,
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions? We shall vote.
aye.
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 5 votes to the affirmative, so we've approved the purchase of 5 more cameras, and hopefully we'll find a way to get them at Miller Park where we probably have a need as well.
Where did you buy them?
We actually purchased them, I don't know if Wendy, I don't remember if I purchased them directly through Rain or Amazon.
Amazon,
It was through
it was Amazon on the treasurer's report.
I
It's
had to
Amazon.
order them, and I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure it was Amazon.
But that's
Is that?
What was it?
Yeah.
Talking about last one?
That's great. And that thing really have worked well. It was a great idea. We have one item under new business. I guess this is just informational, or I guess we do need to approve this. Yeah, this is the old annual minimum municipal obligation for our pension plan. Right now, you have to do I guess by a certain formula, come up with a number that needs to be added to the plan to keep it solvent, I guess. But typically we get the bulk of this money from the state, and we either don't have to add to it. Sometimes we get a plus, sometimes we add a little bit.
Yeah, and this is for the year 2023.
Right, it's for next
It's
year.
actually not, this particular, what you'll be approving would not be due until October of next year. This month we will get, in September is when we get our pension allocation from the state. As Art has mentioned, in the 10 years I've been here, I think there's only 1 year that the township actually paid in addition, because it wasn't quite enough what we received. But I'm off the top of my head, sticks in my mind, it's like $1,600 or something. So the
total.
Oh, the total, yeah, that's this year. Yeah. So for 23, it's $40,376.71 would be the township's obligation to pay toward the pension plan. As the chairman mentioned, we have in the past typically received state aid to cover all that. Our current one, we didn't get a payment yet. It comes this month in September. I believe our obligation for 22 is somewhere around 34,000. But we do need a motion that you acknowledge.
The motion is to approve the obligation, or
Is that you're accepting you're acknowledging and approving the obligation?
right, the obligation. Okay.
So moved.
So I would say it sounded like the chairman making a motion. He's been.
I've been leapfrogged.
Okay.
I have a motion in the second that we approve the minimum municipal obligation amount of $40,376.71.
Aye.
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 5 votes to the affirmative. We have approved that. You know, a couple things in correspondence. One is neighboring township I guess has revised their official map. And they are required, as we were, to share that with the distant municipalities. Neither Todd or I could think of anything that we really would address or comment on. And if you've got great eyes, you can read it. It's just informational. If anybody has a comment, they can come. There's a period of time, I guess, that they have to hold open for responses.
Yeah, look, it's 30 or 45.
I think it could be 45 days. And then you have just, I guess, some advertising from Armstrong Cable Company that they won a nice award. I don't know that we would, I don't know that we would put them in that same category, but nonetheless, you have that in there for your information. And with that, it would bring us to the final item on the agenda, which is to invite anyone in the public who might have comments. We still have nobody, virtual.
How's the fire department on?
Okay, so. I want to thank you for passing the ordinance resolution, and I know it's probably gonna cost more in salary, in time and effort to process that, but with people in the borough getting that, it really helps with motivation, morale, and hopefully getting other residents to step up. I've done a lot of research on this, and to find a borough or a township that's doing this already, let alone a borough and township that are together, it just shows great support from both municipalities, and we're seeing, I think I shared it with you in my monthly wrap up. We're seeing those numbers go in the right direction, so it is making a difference, so. Thank you.
Well,
We appreciate it.
we thank you for all you do, and hopefully you pass that along to the rest of the crews back there. Let them know. And we appreciate you coming out. And staying the course for the meetings too. We appreciate that. Anybody else who wishes to address the board at this time?